Emma had always believed her life was steady, predictable, the kind of calm that came with a comfortable marriage and a routine she could almost navigate blindfolded. Married to Daniel for nearly a decade, she had settled into the rhythm of their suburban Chicago home, the quiet streets, and the soft familiarity of evenings spent together. But lately, a restlessness had crept into her chest, subtle at first, like a shadow at the edge of her thoughts, growing heavier with each day. That evening, as rain tapped gently against the window, she felt that familiar tug, a longing she couldn't quite name. She walked through the house, her mind swirling with memories and emotions she had tucked away, reflecting on conversations, fleeting glances, and unspoken feelings that had begun to stir within her heart over the past year. The house felt unusually quiet, except for the patter of rain, and she craved a private space where she could think, where she could face the contradictions within herself. Her nephew Alex was visiting for the weekend, a bright, sensitive 17-year-old who she had always treated like a son. She loved his easy laugh, his curiosity, the way he could make even ordinary moments feel lively. That evening, though, she needed the solitude of her bedroom, away from the chatter of family life, to put her thoughts into words in her journal and untangle the knots of her heart. She closed the door gently behind her and sank into the quiet, letting her mind wander through memories, regrets, and a faint thrill of forbidden emotions that had started to bloom in her interactions outside her marriage. She recalled the subtle messages, the lingering glances, and the conversations that had left her heart fluttering in ways she hadn't allowed herself to admit. Her reflection was interrupted by an unexpected sound, the soft creak of the door. Before she could fully react, Alex had stepped inside, curiosity clear in his wide eyes, unaware of the private moment he had interrupted. Emma froze, her heart racing, a rush of panic, embarrassment, and fear flooding her chest. The room suddenly felt too small, the walls pressing in, the safety of her private thoughts shattered in an instant. Words caught in her throat as she tried to explain herself without revealing too much, without letting him glimpse the complicated feelings that had been swirling inside her. Alex, sensing something unusual but not fully understanding, backed away, mumbling a quick apology, his eyes filled with a mixture of confusion and concern. Emma closed the door softly after him, her hands trembling, and sank onto her bed, the weight of what had just happened pressing down on her. She realized that the intrusion had exposed vulnerabilities she hadn't wanted anyone to see, the hidden desires and subtle longings that had begun to reshape her inner world. The moment lingered, heavy with tension, as she struggled to regain composure, understanding that this single incident, this accidental encounter, had shifted the emotional landscape of her life. She thought of Daniel, of the comfort and love that had defined their years together, and of the quiet dissatisfaction and yearning she had ignored until now. That night, in the solitude that returned slowly after Alex left, she understood that her life had changed in a subtle but irreversible way. The intrusion had forced her to confront emotions she had been avoiding, emotions tied to longing, curiosity, and the complicated landscape of the heart. She knew she had to reflect on the choices she had made, the desires she had quietly nurtured, and the potential consequences of letting those feelings grow unchecked. The night stretched on, heavy with unspoken truths, and Emma lay in bed staring at the ceiling, her mind replaying the accidental encounter and the sudden awareness that her emotional life had been quietly shifting for months. She realized that the calm she had taken for granted was fragile, that her neat, orderly life could unravel in small, unexpected moments. And as the rain continued to fall outside, she felt a mixture of fear, anticipation, and curiosity about what lay ahead, knowing that she could not simply ignore the stirrings of her heart, that the events of this evening would quietly set the stage for choices, challenges, and emotional awakenings she hadn't yet imagined. That night, Emma's world felt both familiar and unfamiliar, the line between comfort and desire blurred, and she understood with sudden clarity that the life she had known would never feel exactly the same again. The next morning, Emma woke with a restless heart, the memory of last night's interruption still lingering like a shadow she couldn't shake. She moved through the kitchen almost mechanically, preparing breakfast while Daniel chatted about his day ahead, unaware of the storm of emotions inside her. Alex, cheerful as always, sat at the table, his youthful energy filling the room, completely oblivious to the tension that still hovered in Emma's mind. She tried to smile, tried to act normal, but every glance at Alex reminded her of the fragile balance between her private world and the reality of her family life. As the morning unfolded, Emma found herself reflecting on the subtle changes she had felt within herself, the unexpected emotions that had begun to surface, the fleeting thrill of attention she hadn't realized she had been craving, and the quiet dissatisfaction that had been growing beneath the surface of her marriage. It wasn't that she didn't love Daniel, she did, but she had begun to feel the sharp edges of longing, the pull of curiosity toward experiences and emotions she had denied herself for years. The incident with Alex had acted like a mirror, reflecting back to her the desires she hadn't wanted to name. By mid-morning, she decided to take a walk in the neighborhood, needing the space to breathe, to sort her tangled thoughts, and to face the truth of what she was feeling. The cool air, the rhythmic sound of her footsteps, and the gentle rustle of trees offered a temporary refuge, a chance to confront her restlessness without the familiar walls of her home closing in. As she walked, her mind wandered to a co-worker, Mark, who had recently begun noticing her in ways that Daniel never did. Simple gestures, lingering conversations, and shared laughter had awakened emotions she hadn't felt in years, a mix of excitement, guilt, and confusion that gnawed at her from the inside. She realized that while her marriage provided comfort and stability, there was an emotional spark she was missing, a yearning for connection that extended beyond her familiar life. Returning home, she found herself stealing moments to reflect on these feelings, balancing the warmth of family life with the dangerous thrill of emotional curiosity. That evening, as the house grew quiet, Emma found herself once again drawn to her bedroom, seeking a moment of solitude to gather her thoughts. The memory of Alex's unexpected entrance haunted her still, reminding her of how fragile her private moments could be, and how quickly the boundaries between personal emotions and family life could blur. She began writing in her journal, pouring out the conflicting emotions, love, guilt, longing, confusion, and the faint but undeniable thrill of attention from someone else. The act of writing was cathartic, a way to confront emotions she had kept buried, yet it also deepened the awareness of how complicated her heart had become. Later, as dinner ended and the family dispersed to their evening routines, Emma sat alone in the living room, the quiet hum of the house giving her space to reflect. She thought about the life she had built with Daniel, the love they shared, and the small cracks that had begun to appear as her heart reached for experiences beyond the safe, familiar life she knew. The tension between comfort and desire, stability and excitement, love and longing, was almost unbearable. That night, she lay awake, listening to the rain once more, realizing that she was standing at the edge of a choice, to confront these emotions, understand them, and decide how to move forward, or to bury them and hope they would fade. The presence of Alex, the inadvertent intrusion, and the subtle emotional awakenings she felt with Mark were all intertwined, creating a web of feelings that demanded attention. Emma knew that the next days would test her in ways she hadn't anticipated, that the quiet moments of reflection, the sudden awareness of longing, and the subtle pull of curiosity were only the beginning of a journey into her own heart, where desires, fears, and the search for meaning would collide, forcing her to face truths about herself, her marriage, and the life she truly wanted. And as she drifted into sleep, she felt a mix of apprehension and anticipation, knowing that the calm she had taken for granted was fragile, and that the unfolding days would bring choices and encounters that could quietly reshape everything she had believed about love, loyalty, and the depths of the human heart. The following days brought a restless tension into Emma's life that she couldn't ignore, a mix of anticipation and guilt that colored every interaction she had. Daniel remained loving and attentive, yet she noticed how her own thoughts drifted unexpectedly, sometimes to memories of conversations with Mark, a co-worker whose presence had stirred something long dormant in her heart. Every small gesture, a shared laugh, a lingering glance, an innocent comment, seemed to echo inside her, making her feel alive in ways that were both thrilling and terrifying. Alex continued his weekend stay, full of energy and laughter, and Emma found herself watching him with a mix of affection and nervous awareness, always conscious of the fragile boundary between family and privacy. One afternoon, while Alex was out with friends, Emma stayed behind, attempting to regain a sense of normalcy, yet her mind raced with self-reflection and longing. She wandered around the house, touching familiar objects and revisiting memories of her marriage, realizing how much she had invested in comfort and routine, yet how little she had nurtured the spark that made her feel truly vibrant. That evening, Daniel mentioned a small dinner gathering with coworkers, and Emma agreed to join, knowing that it would give her a chance to observe herself in a different setting, to see how her emotions responded to attention outside the home. At the dinner, she noticed Mark immediately, his easy smile, attentive listening, and the subtle way he made her feel noticed, appreciated, alive. Conversations flowed, laughter filled the air, and for a brief time, Emma allowed herself to be fully present, forgetting the quiet unease that had followed her through the week. Later, as she returned home, the house felt both familiar and strange, the echoes of the evening clinging to her thoughts. Alone in her bedroom, she reflected on the delicate balance she had always maintained between love, desire, and loyalty, and how easily that balance could tilt. The journal she kept became her confidant, and she wrote feverishly, exploring emotions she could not speak aloud, tracing the lines of attraction, guilt, and longing, and confronting the truth that her heart was no longer entirely at rest. As night fell, she heard a soft knock on her bedroom door, and to her surprise, it was Alex, apologetic and hesitant, holding a small book he had borrowed. The unexpected visit sent a jolt through her, a reminder of last week's interruption and the fragile line between public and private life. She smiled gently, accepting the book, yet the moment left her heart racing, forcing her to confront her emotions once again, the mix of familial care, the echo of curiosity, and the awareness of boundaries she could not cross. The next morning, Emma found herself retreating into the quiet of the house, feeling the tension build as she wrestled with her own desires and her sense of duty to Daniel, to family, and to herself. Each glance, each memory, each thought seemed magnified, creating a storm of feelings she hadn't anticipated. She began noticing how little moments, Mark's attentions, Alex's innocent interruptions, the quiet comfort of Daniel's love, intertwined, pulling her in multiple emotional directions at once. The realization hit her sharply: life was rarely simple, and emotions rarely stayed neatly contained. By afternoon, Emma had arranged a brief meeting with Mark under the guise of discussing work, yet the conversation lingered, the attention she received stirring her heart in ways that were both exhilarating and alarming. She laughed more freely than she had in months, noticed the warmth of his gaze, and felt herself slipping into a world of emotional tension that balanced on desire and propriety. That night, returning home, she saw Daniel reading quietly in the living room, and the sight filled her with both affection and a pang of guilt, reminding her of the life she had built, the trust she held, and the complicated emotions she now faced. Alone in her room, she reflected again, realizing that her life was a web of emotions, a delicate dance between love, longing, and the choices she had yet to make. Emma understood that she was standing at a crossroads, where every thought, every feeling, every small interaction could ripple into consequences she could not fully predict. The intrusion of Alex, the growing awareness of Mark's attention, and the quiet questions she asked herself about her happiness had created a tension that could no longer be ignored. Sleep came fitfully that night, heavy with the awareness that her heart had been awakened, her emotions stirred, and that the days ahead would challenge her to navigate loyalty, desire, and the fragile beauty of human connection in ways she had never imagined. Each morning brought new decisions, subtle tests of character, and the realization that life, love, and longing often collided in the most unexpected ways, leaving her to wonder which path would lead to fulfillment and which could quietly unravel the life she had always known. The house, once a place of comfort, now felt like a stage where emotions played out, each glance and gesture laden with unspoken meaning, and Emma knew, with quiet certainty, that her journey of self-discovery and emotional awakening was only just beginning. Days passed, each one weaving a complicated pattern of emotions around Emma, leaving her heart restless and her thoughts constantly shifting between comfort, desire, and the unexpected thrills of attention she hadn't realized she craved. Daniel remained his usual caring self, kind and attentive, but Emma found herself noticing things she had overlooked before: the gentle way he smiled at her, the soft tone in his voice, the steady presence that had always been there. Yet alongside that love, her heart pulsed with other, unspoken feelings. Mark continued to reach out, casually at first, his messages and gestures carrying a warmth and familiarity that made her feel seen in ways that were unfamiliar but not unwelcome. Each exchange stirred an excitement in her, a flutter of longing mixed with the guilt of her growing awareness. Meanwhile, Alex's presence in the house, innocent and lively, had a strange way of keeping Emma grounded yet constantly reminded her of boundaries she could not cross. One rainy afternoon, as Emma prepared tea in the kitchen, she found herself reflecting on the delicate, intricate web of relationships she was navigating, the steady love of her husband, the excitement of emotional attention from Mark, and the familial bond with her nephew that brought both joy and a quiet tension. She realized that life was a delicate balance, and every choice, every glance, every small interaction could tilt the scales in ways she had not foreseen. That evening, Emma decided to take a long walk to clear her mind, the crisp air filling her lungs as she let the rain wash over her thoughts. She wandered through the quiet streets, reflecting on the journey of the past weeks, the accidental intrusion by Alex, the awakenings she had felt with Mark, and the steady presence of Daniel that had anchored her through everything. She knew she had to make sense of her emotions before they overwhelmed her, to understand where her heart truly belonged, and what she valued most. As she walked, memories of tender moments with Daniel flashed in her mind, quiet dinners, shared laughter, and the comfort of years spent together, reminding her of the deep foundation of love that had always existed between them. But intertwined with these were the fleeting, delicate thrills she had felt from Mark, the excitement of being noticed, of feeling a spark she hadn't acknowledged before, and the subtle awareness of her own desires that had been stirred by these moments. Returning home, she found Daniel reading in the living room, the soft glow of the lamp casting shadows that felt both familiar and comforting. She hesitated at the doorway, feeling the weight of the choices she had yet to confront, knowing that the next step she took would shape not only her happiness but the emotional balance of everyone she cared about. Later, in the quiet of her bedroom, Emma poured her heart into her journal, writing down every thought, every flutter of emotion, every pang of guilt, and every spark of longing. She explored the delicate contradictions of love, desire, loyalty, and self-discovery, realizing that human emotions rarely stayed neat and predictable. That night, sleep came slowly, heavy with reflection, yet tinged with hope that she could navigate her feelings honestly, without harming those she loved, and find clarity in the midst of complexity. Over the next few days, Emma began to embrace small moments of self-awareness, observing how her heart responded, recognizing the boundaries she had to maintain, and quietly appreciating the layers of love, attention, and connection surrounding her. She shared smiles with Daniel, deep conversations with Mark, and laughter with Alex, each interaction teaching her more about herself, about the balance between longing and loyalty, excitement and stability, family and personal desire. By the end of Alex's visit, Emma felt a quiet shift within herself, an understanding that life's emotional landscape was intricate, unpredictable, yet beautiful, and that love could exist in many forms without diminishing its value. The house returned to its usual calm once Alex left, but Emma carried a new sense of awareness and maturity, knowing that her heart had grown, that she had faced emotional awakenings without giving in to recklessness, and that she had learned to navigate desire, affection, and responsibility with grace. In the days that followed, she cherished quiet evenings with Daniel, subtle moments of connection with Mark that stayed within boundaries, and the simple joy of reflection, realizing that love was not just about passion or excitement but about understanding, respect, and the quiet, enduring presence of people who truly cared. She learned to listen to her heart, to honor her emotions without letting them dictate her actions blindly, and to embrace the complexity of human relationships with patience and insight. By the time spring arrived in full bloom, Emma felt a renewed sense of balance in her life, a harmony between the love she had, the connections she had discovered, and the wisdom she had gained from confronting her own heart. She understood that life would always present moments of temptation, curiosity, and challenge, but that the strength of love, clarity of conscience, and the courage to face her own emotions honestly would guide her through even the most delicate situations. In that quiet understanding, Emma found peace, a sense of completeness that came not from perfection but from the ability to navigate her heart with honesty, tenderness, and grace, knowing that she had grown, learned, and embraced the richness of life's emotional journey without losing herself or the love she held dear.